Hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. Just a few minutes. We're gonna wait for a few more people to trickle in, but thanks so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come out to this. Yeah. Awesome. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Start Your Term with GC Students event. My name is Mira Refik. I am a policy analyst with Health Canada, and I will be your moderator for today. Today, I'm speaking to you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. I encourage you, in turn, to think about the presence of the Indigenous peoples, past and present, who call these lands home. So, the GC Students Network, in collaboration with the Federal Youth Network, is proud to welcome you to the Government of Canada. So, we have tons of information to share today. Please note that this session will be offered in English and French simultaneously. To view the French session, please return to the Zoom lobby and join the French session. All right. So moving on to the next slide. It is my pleasure today to begin this event by welcoming the Senior Associate Deputy Minister of Employment and Social Development and the Deputy Minister Champion for Employees with Disabilities in the Federal Public Service. DM Tina has spent more than 30 years in the federal government. Throughout her career, she has accumulated a wide range of experience in policy, programs, and operations, and has a passion for public service. She knows firsthand the stresses that organizations face in times of peril, what it takes to rise to the challenge, and the importance of innovation. She is committed to service, policy, and program excellence, as well as continuous improvement. She cares deeply about people, diversity, inclusion, mental health, and well-being. So please join me in welcoming DMT Tina, who will help us start your term with a great message.
Thank you so much, Mira, and what a great intro. So I appreciate your warm words of welcome. And I would just like to say good afternoon to everybody and note it's an absolute pleasure for me to be here. And I am joining you today from Ottawa. I'm actually sitting in the Confederation building, and I am on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. For those of you who might appreciate a physical description of me, I am a white woman, short blonde hair. I have dark blue glasses, and I'm wearing a black blouse this afternoon. And it's an honor. It's an honor for me to be here and to support you as you start your student term with the Government of Canada. And the session entitled Start Your Term is going to give you information about onboarding tools, your employment terms and conditions, as well as a series of practical tips and tricks so that you can make the most out of your time working for the federal public service. And it's going to provide you with a chance to learn and acquire skills that are going to actually help you wherever you happen to work. So with that as a bit of a backdrop, let's discuss the importance of cultivating strong relationships and building networks. So relationships are the backbone of any successful career, and they provide opportunities for personal development as well as career advancement. And it's important to be genuine, listen actively, and offer help wherever you can. And remember, networking is not just about what you can get, it's also about what you can give. And there are many ways to build your network, like attending events like this one, joining professional groups, and staying connected. And the stronger your network, the more resources you're going to have to draw upon when you need them the most. And you talked about 30 years in the public service. I almost have 35, actually, which I keep thinking is, I can remember when I started, right? Which was many years ago. In fact, probably many of you wouldn't even have been born yet, which makes me feel really old. But besides that, when I restarted in the public service, I was so excited about the opportunity to contribute and really serve my country. But I remembered feeling overwhelmed about how big the public service is. And I've worked in 9 different organizations, from public health to public safety, and now at Employment and Social Development Canada. And many Canadians actually don't realize the number of different diverse careers and opportunities that the federal public service offers. You can be a park warden with Parks Canada, a border agent with the Canada Border Services Agency, a biotechnologist working in a world-class lab, or a policy analyst helping shape the laws of the future. The possibilities are truly endless. And what has supported me to feel included during my career and to be successful? I learned early on about building networks and connecting with mentors to help me support and grow. So, second thing I want to talk about is career goals. Identify your short-term career goals and then break them down into manageable and achievable steps. This is going to help you not only define your objectives, but set out a realistic time frame. But be realistic. You're not going to become somebody in a deputy minister's position by tomorrow. It's going to take you a number of years. So be realistic about the goals that you set yourself. But setting goals is important, but things change. So it's important to actually review them and adjust your goals to stay on track. The third and final essential skill to achieving success is taking initiative and being proactive. I personally think anybody can be a leader wherever they sit in an organization. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Seek them out. If you see a problem, propose a solution. If you have an idea, share it. This demonstrates leadership and shows that you're invested in your work and the success of your organization. As public service, one of the main goals is to provide services to Canadians. So improving service delivery to Canadians is about making services more efficient, accessible, and responsive. But to do that, we need to think about the people we serve. What are their needs? How can we meet them? Are there services we're providing accessible to everybody? So I would suggest it's important to stay informed about latest trends and tools and be open to adopting new approaches. And whether you're working in a service delivery program or policy development, providing internal services, or whatever job you're in, just do the best you can. Nobody can ask for more than that, and Canadians deserve no less. And by the way, they pay your salary, so they care about what we do. And so one final thought that I would leave you with is for students who have a disability. So in November 2022, I was appointed to the role as the federal champion for employees with disabilities in the public service. I feel really privileged to be in this position because I see every day the incredible contributions that employees with disabilities make to our workplace. And the public service is firmly committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know to be the best public service, we need to be representative. And we've made a bold commitment to actually hire 5,000 net new employees with disabilities by 2025. And I'm proud to say that we're on our way to achieving that goal. Some employees with disabilities may need supports to do their job. If you're one of those people, don't be afraid to ask for them. We're committed to ensuring you and everybody else has the tools you need to succeed. And for those of you who are starting your first job with the public service, or if you're returning for another year, I want to give you one final thought. Use this event and every work opportunity you attend to learn as much as you can. The summer is your opportunity to play a role in developing the future of Canada. So let's work together to create a brighter future for all Canadians. Thank you, and I hope you have an awesome summer experience. So Mira, back to you.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that was so well said. Thank you so much for the message. It's really inspiring to see senior leaders take time out of their busy schedule to, welcome students and the next generation of public servants into the government. So thank you for sharing all those insights and ensuring that all Canadians have access, to these equal opportunities. So thank you so much. Perfect. So moving on. Just a few notes about today's meeting. Just a note that cameras and microphones are all deactivated. Today's event will be recorded and made available for viewing afterwards. For any questions, we invite you to use the question and answer or Q&A function. And finally, to improve your viewing experience, we encourage you to disconnect from VPN if possible. If you are experiencing technical issues, it is recommended to relaunch the webcast link that has been provided to you or use a personal device. All right. And please note that today's content is also available to you and can be accessed via the GC Students Wiki page. So feel free to scan the QR code for easy access. All right. So please note that today's event is addressed to help students working in the Government of Canada, such as those employed in FSWAP, co-op, or RAP programs. So if you are not currently a student working for the GC, follow at GC_jobs on social media so you don't miss the next information session or visit the students jobs page. Perfect. So moving on, before we begin, let me introduce you to our fantastic team of dedicated volunteers behind the GC Students Network. So GC Students is a volunteer team of 6. So Carl and Priyanka are both co-chairs. We also have Yang and Nicole, who are project agents, and Alexa and Audrey Ann, who are advisors. So today we have Priyanka here to give the presentations. So I'll pass it off to Priyanka to give a brief introduction of herself.
Thank you so much, Mira. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. I hope all of you are enjoying your day so far. We're really happy that you're here to hear our presentation. I've been a part of GC Students for the last 2 years in the capacity as co-chair. I do this as a volunteer job, so I'd like to think it shows the passion I have in helping students start their careers within the federal public service. I myself started my career in the Government of Canada as a student through the Federal Student Work Experience program. I really started off not really knowing what I wanted to do with my career, but because of FSWAP and the opportunities that I got and the networks that I got to build, I really found a very clear path for myself in terms of what I want to do for my career. With that being said, my substantive role is as a senior HR advisor within Immigrations, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. I worked on a student file for a very, very long time, but now I am going to be working with HR planning. So it's a very fun kind of way to introduce different realms of HR for myself and how we can use those disciplines to better your experience as students. So it's been a very interesting ride for me. I'm going to hand it back over to Mira. I do also want to end off by saying that my pronouns are she, her, and I am wearing a yellow shirt. I have brown skin, black hair that's about shoulder length. Yeah, I'll pass it back to Mira.
Awesome. Thanks, Priyanka. Yeah, I myself actually started off as a student. I did both co-op and FSWAP. And for all you guys attending, it's a great position to be in. So really excited to have you on board. So moving on, each term, the Federal Public Service welcomes thousands of students into more than 200 agencies and departments across the country. So you are joining more than 335,000 public servants working day and night to deliver services to Canadians. But navigating Canada's biggest employer isn't really obvious. So this is why we're all here to help you orient yourself into a gigantic institution. So I will turn to Priyanka to get us started with some resources to begin your student contract.
Thank you so much. We can go to the next slide, please. That's great. All right. So the first step we recommend is learning about the Government of Canada and then your specific organization that you're employed in. So it's really important to be informed of what's around you, what your government department or agency's mandate is, so that you can effectively do your work. So a few resources that we have to help you get started are the orientation presentation that is done by GC students. There's a welcome to the GC by the Federal Youth Network, which is our sister network. We also have courses such as the orientation to the public service, conditions of employment for student workers. That's an opportunity for you to Google that and see what your conditions of employment are as a FSWEP co-op or research affiliate program participant. And then always be aware of the compensation that you have as a student worker. So staying up to date on what the rates of pay are and what they mean for you is also extremely important. Starting your career off, it is important to also be visible. So having conversations with your manager about what it is that your team does, getting those tips and tricks right off the bat so that you can get started and contribute to the team that you've joined. You can scan the QR code on your screen and it'll take you to all the resources that can help you get onboarded for this term. I'll go to the next slide, please. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so GC Students is under the Federal Youth Network. So I mentioned the Federal Youth Network is our sister network. The Federal Youth Network is a national network for young and new public servants in Canada. They plan virtual and in-person learning and networking events during the year. So make sure you are keeping up to date with all the things that the Federal Youth Network is doing. They have a wiki page, they have social media channels. If you just Google Federal Youth Network, it'll guide you to all the resources that they have. When I say that they have so many resources to look at and listen to or watch, it's really no joke. It can really take up some time. And I recommend that you do take time out of your day if you have that opportunity for learning to go look at the resources that they do have. It's also important to know that the Federal Youth Network is there to help with your networking. They have events. So we have in-person learning days. There is one in the National Capital Region next week. So just keeping an eye out of the things that are being held in the regions can be extremely helpful for you in terms of that networking piece and in-person learning piece. But don't worry if you can't attend those. They do also have online sessions as well throughout the years. So definitely go ahead and take a look at the events that they're hosting. But a great way to kind of get the information you need to get started in your careers. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so we'll go into, actually, sorry, I'm going to ask to go back 2 slides just because I want to make sure we introduce GC Students correctly. Next slide, please. That's the one. Perfect. All right. Before we move on to the actual content of today's presentation, I also want to make sure you understand what the GC Students Network is. So we are the reference for students. Our goal is to make sure we have events for you, networking opportunities. We're developing and sharing resources that we find. We're also looking at new information that comes out for all of you so that you can stay up to date on what you're supposed to be doing and how you can maximize your student contract while you are with the Federal Public Service, and then how to start your career with the Government of Canada. We're also here to answer some of your questions when we do sessions like this, or we have social media. It's a great platform for you to ask your questions. You're probably not the only one who has that question. I'm sure there's a lot of students across the GC who have a similar question to you. So it's worth your while to ask that and try to get an answer. So we're really here to support you. We're always looking for feedback. We'll have a feedback survey at the end of today's session, but really, we're here to make sure that we can provide you with the information that you're looking for and that you feel comfortable and confident in the role that you're in. All right, so I apologize to the person, to Justine actually who's doing the slides, but we will go on and I'll pass it back to Mira to introduce this section.
Perfect. Thanks for all that advice, Priyanka. Honestly, I remember starting off as a student myself It can be overwhelming. So having the GC Students Network as well as the Federal Youth Network are both incredible resources to have your back, especially when you're entering, the government. It's big, it's intimidating, but you have resources here. So anyway, once you've started working, with us to continue your onboarding, you also want to know how to take advantage of opportunities offered by your student contract. So I'll pass it off to Priyanka to dive into that a bit more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro to this section. So I think that one of the key things I want to highlight is really the benefits of student employment in the GC. So one, we're serving Canadians in an uncertain, high stakes world at home and abroad. One of probably the more recent experiences that we all feel that we can relate to is the COVID experience that we've had. Maybe you haven't had that experience, but you're kind of seeing how that has impacted us now in the future, now that we're somewhat moved past all of that. So I think that the work that we do serving Canadians in high stakes situations is amazing. The opportunities that you can have to contribute to the way that we serve Canadians is amazing. So it's definitely a huge benefit of being a student within the government of Canada. It also provides you that opportunity to find what you're passionate about. Tina gave a few examples of what you could potentially be in your career with the federal public service, but it really doesn't end there. There's just so many opportunities. A lot of the time coming in as a student, it can be very confusing. You might not know what you want to do in your career. You might be kind of testing the waters in certain areas. And I think as a student, with the mobility that you have, you can find those experiences to see what fits best for you with your passion and your education that you are in. So no matter what, we have a quote here or a statement, no matter what your passion or interest is, the public service has an opportunity for you. So it's truly a huge benefit in your career because it allows you that opportunity to find what you enjoy. We'll go on to the next slide. Not only are finding your passion and serving Canadians a big benefit to a student employment at the GC, but finding diverse work experience, it's kind of what I was just saying, where once you've had one student contract with the government of Canada, it's much easier for you to get rehired. So finding opportunities in another team within the same department. So let's just say, for example, if you are super passionate about immigrations, refugees, and citizenship Canada and the mandate of the department in itself, you don't always have to stay within the same team, within the same department. If you love the department and want to move around, that opportunity can be easier to find if the opportunity is available because rehiring is much easier. So it allows you to kind of diversify your experience, gain new skills as you work as a student within the GC. Not only that, you do get benefits after 6 months of student employment, which means you will have to, there are eligibility criteria for that, and we encourage you to discuss that with your manager. But it means that working more than 12.5 hours per week and without a break in service, you could have access to insurance and pension funds. There is a very, very popular one here that is a benefit, which is student bridging. So student bridging is an opportunity that you could potentially get once you've completed your studies. The technical term for student bridging is an external non-advertised process. We won't be getting into the staffing terminology today, but student bridging is really a way for you to network and find a potential opportunity after you're done your studies to get a job. So I think that it's a huge benefit. It gives you a wide range of ways to network and find the opportunity that might be best for you. Lastly, there is lastly, but it's definitely not the least, there's service buyback. So your years of work as a student worker can be counted as a part of your working years for early retirement if you decide to buy back your time. I do want to highlight that I'm not a compensation expert, so I won't have answers necessarily on how the mechanism of service buyback works. But if you are interested in doing something like service buyback, I do recommend talking to your manager about that, as well as the client contact center, who are the experts in compensation related questions. So I just know that that's something that is common. So if you have any questions, client contact center in terms of service buyback is your best bet. All right, we'll go on to Mira, back to you.
Awesome. So now we want to hear from you guys. We're going to have a poll question popping up on your screen momentarily. We want to know if you currently work in your field of study, and did you know that student workers have access to Government of Canada benefits? So I'll just give it a few seconds for you guys to answer, and excited to see the results.
Yes, I think it's so important to know this question for us as well. Specifically, do you work in your field of study? Because I think that that's a huge part in determining what might be your career in the future. Sometimes not always, but it is something that's interesting to know for us as well. So when we provide advice and guidance, we can make sure we're supporting you in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Just from my own experience, I didn't initially, when I started in the government, work in my field of study. My background is finance, that's what I studied in school, but I fell into Health Canada and I ended up falling in love with it. And even though it was considered
Exactly.
like public health, there was a lot of like financial elements to it. So there's always like transferable skills too. So there's always a lot of opportunity though, maximum.
Absolutely. I
Okay,
know. Okay. I think the poll has stopped.
awesome. I believe, are the results being shared currently? Is anyone able to see that?
Yes, I can see them on my end, and
Okay.
I do see that a lot of students, 71% of those who responded are working in their field of study. Um, and for the second question, did you know that student workers have access to GC benefits? Actually, 62% of them did not know that. So now you know, and it's a great conversation to have with your manager if you had any questions about that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So now we're going to be pivoting to the next subject. I know it's a hot topic for many of you, and it's the subject of networking.
Cool. I think this is one of my all-time favorite subjects to talk about. So we'll go to the next slide here. I'm going to start off by saying that networking is a skill that can take time to build. It's not something that always comes naturally to everybody, and that's okay, because it is difficult. It is difficult to put yourself out there and, go out and network. I think if there's any experience I can share is that after COVID, after being in the house for so long and not really interacting with people, I found it quite difficult to go out and network and meet new people and have a discussion face to face, just because I fell out of that kind of place, and it was very hard for me to come back to it. But networking is one of the most beneficial pieces as a part of your career, because not only will it help you find mentors, it could help you find opportunities, people who are looking to hire you, who see your worth. It's honestly one of the best things that could happen to you. So I highly recommend starting to build a network if you haven't already done so. And we're going to provide you with some ways that you can stand out, so that you are confident to go out and network face to face, or potentially even online if that's an opportunity for you. So how to stand out. So we say be professional. And what that means is when you are attending a networking event or you are attending a presentation, it's always important to make sure you are on schedule, you are dressed appropriately, and you have a professional attitude. First impressions do a lot, and especially when you're meeting with managers, supervisors, executives, anyone who could potentially hire you in the future. Not only that, colleagues are a huge part as well, because having that professional attitude and showing that you're interested is a key sign for people to say, hey, good fit for us, to make sure that, they have somebody that they know is interested in the work that they might be doing. So staying professional is a great way to stand out. Being motivated and enthusiastic. So sometimes, and we're going to talk a little bit about it in a later point, but being curious and asking relevant questions can help it shows that you're interested and enthusiastic about a certain conversation or a certain topic. So sometimes within networking events, it's best to prepare yourselves in terms of the topics that you want to be talking about or discussing with the individual that you meet there. Let's just say, for example, you're going to a GC students networking event, and you know that it's purely to find and build your network amongst colleagues and students that are just the same as you. Going with preparation in terms of questions such as, what school do you go to? What department do you work at? What level classification do you work as a student? And maybe bonding over the fact that you don't even know what that means, or that there's so many acronyms in the government that you never understand what's going on. It's just making sure that you have that motivation and enthusiasm showing in terms of knowing that you want to meet somebody who is in the same experiences you're in. Be proactive and show initiative. So this is a piece that I think goes in terms of a long-term standout point. So you want to make sure you're looking for opportunities to contribute more, offer constructive ideas and suggestions, be willing to take on additional responsibilities. I know I mentioned networking as a piece of going out and doing face-to-face networking at events, but you can also network within your own team, your own department. A lot of the time you're meeting new people when you're working on the job, and you have that opportunity to network by showing how proactive and how you take initiative, because other people watching you may be very intrigued by that or inspired by that. So those are some key points to stand out in the workplace, especially if you're looking to build your network. Communicating effectively is something that everyone should work on all the time. I think that being clear and concise, not only in verbal communication, but written communication, can be highly beneficial in your career overall. So that just means making sure that you're participating effectively in meetings and networking sessions, listening actively during certain meetings and discussions so that you can contribute clearly and concisely, can definitely make communication a huge piece that stands out. Again, preparation is a big piece of that. So for those who are introverted and who are shy to go out there, sometimes that preparation piece can be extremely helpful in that communication and proactive piece of networking. So when we talk about networking, we said it was difficult, and a big part of networking is making sure you take care of your work. So take that time to be thorough, accurate in the things that you're assigned to do. So in the tasks that you're given, make sure you're meeting deadlines, or if you can't meet a deadline, communicate effectively to say that you can't meet that deadline. These traits are super beneficial when networking within the workplace, because it guides, it shows how proactive you're being and how you're taking initiative in yourself and in the work that you do. That's extremely important as well. We talked about developing your skills and knowledge. So not only should you be developing the knowledge about the mandate in your department, in your team, it's really developing the knowledge on how you can be a better employee. There are a lot of traits, skills that you can learn to help you and benefit you throughout your career. So making sure you ask questions about that to your manager or the colleagues around you, see how you can start to develop those skills and knowledge and bring that back with you when you network. Lastly is building professional relationships. There's many ways to build professional relationships. That could be in your workplace face to face. It could be through MS Teams, whether or not, for example, you do a presentation and you reach out to the participants later on to just stay connected through LinkedIn. So through social media, through events that are more social, through the events from Federal Youth Network or GC Students or any other networks throughout the government of Canada. So many ways to build professional relationships and stay in contact. So these are a few ways that you can stand out. But now that we've kind of gone through the ways that you can stand out, I'm going to talk about a key question that gets asked a lot of the time. So a lot of the time students ask, I'm looking for a student job in my field of study. Where should I start my research? It was great to see that a lot of students today felt as though they are working in their field of study. And I think that that's the goal. It's a key piece in finding the proper world for you within the government of Canada to make sure you have the correct education so that bridging opportunities are available to you when the opportunity comes. So the first thing is just knowing that after your first student contract, and I've mentioned this earlier, you can network to find another job opportunity in the field of study that you're interested or that you're in. So networking is a big piece to finding other opportunities. So you might meet somebody who is working in a team that interests you and is related to what you're studying. And sometimes just that conversation could be a great starter into finding opportunities elsewhere. After your studies, you are eligible for student bridging process. So that's the external non-advertised process, which is found through networking. So you can see the key theme here is where should you start your research? And it's really through that networking piece, whether that means talking to your colleagues, talking to your managers, talking to individuals who work alongside you that might be a student as well. Maybe talking to someone who already was a student and then is now an employee of the government. Those are all great ways to start that networking piece. For being mindful of everybody's personalities, you can start off small. Maybe do a face-to-face meeting or online meeting with a colleague of yours, just one-on-one. That's also a great way to start networking. Start asking questions about kind of where their career started and what they feel interested in and what education background they have so that you know where to go and what steps could potentially be next for you. We'll move on to the next slide. So how can I start my career in the government of Canada after my student job? Now, all workers who have previously had a student contract within the government of Canada are eligible for an external non-advertised process. So we call it student bridging. A few ways that you can do this is one, networking. So student bridging opportunities are found through networking. They are not posted anywhere. You do not have to apply to a student bridging opportunity. You might see inventories. Those are something that are you can add your name to, but that's also a networking piece. So you really have to network to find those types of opportunities. And I mentioned inventories. That's the next point here, which is to register to inventories of students and or graduates of different departments and agencies. So our wiki page has a list of these inventories. If you are interested and are eligible to be bridged because you're about to finish your studies, it's highly recommended to put your name in these inventories. And what this does is it increases your visibility, and you never know, someone might reach out to you and say, hey, we have an opportunity, and we'll go on and evaluate you accordingly for a position. So those are great ways to kind of network and find opportunities after your studies so you could start your career. There's also graduating ISEO participants can register for the Indigenous Career Pathways, and graduating EOSD participants can also register for the Virtual Door to Talent with Disability. So there's so many programs available through the Public Service Commission. We actually will have someone on the call today, a representative from the Public Service Commission, to discuss some aspects of the ISEO and EOSD program. We will move on to the next slide, please. And I think it'll be going back to you, Mira. Oh, no, not you yet. It's still me. So how do you prepare to network? So there are a lot of, I just want to kind of slow down a little bit and say that we're using a lot of terminology such as external non-advertised, classification, occupational groups, which is the first thing you see on this screen here. And we do actually have a session that we hold at the end of our term to really provide you with the definitions of what these mean. But right now, it's really just to know that this terminology exists, and so that you can start kind of building yourself up so that when it is time to discuss these pieces, you're ready at the end of the term to understand truly what these pieces mean. So we have the first step in terms of preparing to network is really to research your occupational group. And that is really the 2 letters and numbers that kind of align with what your position could theoretically be. As a student, you are not classified. You won't have a letter and number near your as a part of your position. So it's a great question to ask to start that networking piece, to see what occupational group is within your team and how that fits with you in terms of your career progression. There are also social media platforms such as Facebook groups where you can connect with people in those groups that might be relevant to what you want to do in your career. On our wiki page, we do have a list of those Facebook groups, so highly recommend to go ahead and take a look at that. There is a career marketplace on GC Connects. So given that you have access to your work laptops, GC Connects is a great place to start. There is the GC directory where you can use keywords to search the departments and branches that interest you. I know that some students have questions about how do I reach out to somebody who's working in a specific department or in a specific field that I'm interested in. So cold calling was a thing. Now maybe we call it cold emailing. I don't know. But it's really important to keep in mind that if that is the route you decide to use and contact somebody that you've never met before, it is really important to have intent to the message that you are sending. Keep it short and sweet. Make sure it's not that you're saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you have one? It's more to learn about what they do and how they got there. Because a lot of the time those emails will get ignored. Do not get disheartened. It is just that we have to be mindful when we're messaging individuals to see, why how they've worked in that field, and to really bring that knowledge within yourself before you go out and are searching for opportunities through that networking piece. So I just wanted to highlight that for point number 4. We also have platforms such as GC Connects, I mentioned that above, and GC Exchange. Those are great ways to network during your GC student contract. You only have access to these platforms when you have your work laptop, if you have one. So you have to use a government issued laptop to access the GC Connects and GC Exchange pages. And lastly, we have LinkedIn and Twitter. So they're excellent ways to use these tools in a professional way. And actually, we have a session tomorrow on how to leverage social media. So it's a great session to take so that you can kind of get started in building those social media platforms in a professional way if you have social media. All right, we'll go on to the next slide.
All right, thanks so much, Priyanka. So we have another few questions for you guys. The poll's going to be popping up shortly. So we would like to know, Would you like to start your career in the government of Canada after your studies? And do you know the professional group that you want to start your career in? For me personally, I didn't know what professional group I wanted to start in when I joined the government, and that is perfectly okay. I actually learned it by first just meeting people honestly through my day-to-day role. I started off my role as a student doing admin work. And once I like got to know the team, they told me a bit about their own experiences and their other roles that they had historically, and it really blew my mind. And that's really what the got my, mind going about, where do I want to take my career? It can be very intimidating, but just know that there's no like pressure to know right away, everything will come, everything will happen.
Absolutely. And I think it just goes back to what DMT said. And she was just saying, take your time and figuring out kind of what you want to do and where you want to be. There's so many opportunities within the government of Canada, and being a student in the government of Canada is extremely beneficial because you have the opportunity to really figure out what you want to do. And I think that it's a great point that you share, Mira, because even when I started as a student, I had no idea what it meant by professional group or occupational group. And I didn't even know what those letters meant or the levels meant. So it's totally okay if you're unsure.
Mm-hmm. But
But a
think
great
about the
conversation starter.
For sure, yeah. So we have some results here. So it looks like 67% of people would like to start their career in the government of Canada after their studies. That's amazing. We have 28% that are unsure, which is fine. Honestly, for unsure, I was in that same boat. But once you really dive into the work, you really develop a greater appreciation for it. So and
Mhm.
wow, 66% know the professional group they want to start their career in, which is really impressive because I did not know at the beginning. So
Amazing.
yeah, it's impressive. Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much for answering all that, everyone. So I'll lead it on to Priyanka to continue the presentation.
All right, mentoring and networking resources. So I didn't talk much about mentoring, but I will a little bit now. So mentoring is a great way to get advice and guidance from somebody throughout your professional journey. Mentors can be somebody who works within your department, somebody who doesn't work within your department, someone you met through a networking event. It really doesn't matter, but it is a piece in your career that can be highly beneficial when you are trying to navigate your career. Sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty and everybody goes through bumps in the road, and you need somebody there to provide that advice and guidance for you, to provide that support, because a mentor can be somebody who's already gone through something like that, and it can definitely be a guiding piece to kind of make you feel okay about a current situation that you're in. Or if you're in a situation of deciding what you want to do with your career, it could really be that stepping stone to help you decide that. So we do have mentoring resources that we encourage you to visit on our GC Students Wiki page. The Federal Youth Network will have resources as well. There might be resources within your own department and agencies. So if you don't have a mentor yet, I highly recommend seeking out a mentor through these resources that we're sharing, or through your own agency and department, so that you can start right away, and make sure you have this individual with you along the way. Not only can mentors provide you advice and guidance, they can also be extremely inspiring. A lot of the time when I speak to my mentors, they really just remind me of the amazing work that we can do within the government of Canada. And for me specifically within my HR role, what it means to do what my work really truly means. And I think that inspiring factor really inspires me to just be better and to work harder in my field. So that inspiration piece can also help you within your career immensely. So we would highly recommend looking into a mentor if you don't already have one, and the resources will definitely help you get started with that. There are networks and networking. So we have youth networks, Federal Youth Network, of course, and we have GC students. There might be networks within your own government department or agency. Staying connected to these networks is a great first step. So if you're hesitant and you're shy, just stay connected through platforms within your own department or agency, or through social media, or through events like this. This is also a great first step to kind of stay connected and familiarize yourself with these different networks. Being involved in kind of the updates of what's going on. You might be interested in some of the events that might be held or some of the sessions that we might host. So a great way to kind of start that networking aspect, and a few resources that you can keep in your back pocket when you're ready to network. We also have diversity networks. On the GC Students Wiki page, we have a list of a bunch of networks, so we highly recommend you take part in that. A lot of departments and agencies have diversity networks within as well, where they will share information, updates, and events that are potentially being held within those diversity networks. So we highly recommend you stay within the diversity networks to kind of keep your eyes open and stay informed of what all is available in terms of those resources as well. So many ways to network and so many ways to start the mentoring piece. Not only, we'll go to the next slide. Not only is mentoring and networking a big piece, but learning is a huge piece. So no matter what, everyone should always try to find a way to learn. You're never going to know everything. So learning is something that's just going to be continuous throughout your career. But as a student, you have an even greater opportunity to learn and really focus on the different skills that you want to learn and gain so that you can become an employee of the Government of Canada. So to start off with the career development piece, the Federal Youth Network is really your one-stop shop for learning. They have career resources, they have virtual learning series, career boot camps. So that's an amazing boot camp that they hold at the end of January each year. I've taken part in it, and it's just a learning opportunity every single time. It's also a huge networking opportunity. So definitely career bootcamp, a great place to kind of start that career development piece. They have in-person learning days. I mentioned the one happening in the National Capital Region next week, but there is they have in-person learning days across Canada. So just keep your eye open for something that might be coming within your region so that you can take part in those in-person learning days. And they have their sessions recorded. So if you do not have the opportunity to go in person or attend one of their virtual sessions, you can always go to their YouTube channel and watch the sessions that they have. We also have the Canada School of Public Service. So you can visit their website, their learning platform, to register for trainings to learn more about the government. This is an opportunity for you to discuss this with your supervisor or manager to say, hey, these are the skills that I'd like to learn, the competencies that I want to gain while I'm working within your team. Are there any courses that I could take through the Canada School of Public Service and integrate that into my work plan? It's a great way to kind of make sure that you have that constant piece of learning and skill growth throughout your contract. I didn't speak much about a work plan, so I just want to briefly mention that a work plan is a huge piece to making sure your student contract is successful, which means that having a discussion with your manager or supervisor about what your career goals are, what you want to gain from this opportunity, new experiences you want to have, or skills that you want to practice. Those are really great ways to start your student contract so that you can continue on with touching base on these career goals and skill goals that you have for the contract. So making sure you have that conversation so that you can integrate these learning pieces into it and ensure that you're gaining the experience that you want to be gaining. Okay, so I think there is a poll here. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how helpful was the session to help you start your term? See answers coming in. Oh, this is amazing. Okay. I think that, okay, so we see it's a 4 out of 5, which is okay. And I think that as you go on throughout your term, it's important to continue asking questions, having conversations with your supervisor, your manager about things that you might be uncertain about. But we will continue on with the session. So, okay, we will move on. I will actually introduce, I'll let Mira introduce our special guests today.
Awesome, thank you. So I would like to now introduce Camila, who's a Human Resources Advisor from the Public Service Commission, who's here to talk about 2 amazing programs available to students. So Camila, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mira. I'm happy to be here. I think our slides are going to be shown in a moment. So I'll just get started with that. So yeah, hello, everyone. Thank you so much to GC students, Mira and Priyanka, for inviting me to come present to all of you today. My name is Camila Dasgupta, as Mira said. My pronouns are she and her. And for anyone who might possibly benefit from a visual description, I have black hair and brown skin, and I am currently wearing a cream-colored shirt today. So I am employed with the Public Service Commission in the directorate that works on what we call inclusive recruitment. And my team is called the Diversity and Inclusion Center of Expertise. So I'm very pleased to be here today to tell all of you about 2 great programs that you may be eligible to participate in as a student who is currently completing a work term with the Government of Canada. So today we're going to talk about the Indigenous Student Employment Opportunity. I know Priyanka mentioned it earlier. We call that ISAO, so I'll generally refer to this program as ISAO going forward. And the other program we're going to talk about is the Employment Opportunity for Students with Disability, which is also known as EOSD. So basically, I want to take this time I have with you today to introduce you to the programs, to explain what they're all about, and also tell you how you can register for them if that's something you are interested in. So I'll just double check if the slides are working on your end. If not, I can share my screen with the slides. Mira, do you know if they're working?
They should be on in just a second.
Okay, no worries. I've got them up here too. I can share my screen if need be. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So what is ISAO and EOSD? So basically, they are support services for students who are hired to work for the Government of Canada that have what we call self-identified as Indigenous or as having a disability. Or of course, you can identify as both. So students who are completing a work term of any type and belong to these communities are eligible to participate. So when we talk about student work terms, I think Mira mentioned it earlier, and Priyanka, we often refer to programs such as the Federal Student Work Experience Program, so FSWEP. But there's other programs too, such as the Research Affiliate Program, Co-op, completing an internship. These are all essentially what we call student work terms, work programs, and anyone who is completing one of these programs is eligible for ISAO and EOSD. We also accept students who are working as terms and casuals as long as they have student status with an academic institution. So to break it down, basically, if you are a student, you've been hired to work with the federal government for a term of any type, and you are an Indigenous person or a person with a disability or both, then you are eligible for one or both of these programs. So we do want to be clear here that ISAO and EOSD are two separate programs that serve their respective communities independently. But the Public Service Commission, my department, offers these programs essentially as sister initiatives to improve the representation and the inclusion of Indigenous persons and persons with disabilities in the federal public service. So while today I'll be presenting these programs together and talking about them together, I do just want to make sure that everyone on the call knows that they're two separate programs that offer support tailored specifically to the people that they're serving. So I'm going to take some time now to explain the benefits of these two programs to all of you today, and also explain how to register, because hopefully if you're eligible, then you'll be interested in participating. So we can move to the next slide now. So the programs offer a variety of supports and services all year long, which I'll now cover in more detail on this slide here. Some of the major activities include events and learning sessions where participants get to learn about culturally and community appropriate Government of Canada resources and initiatives. The programs also offer a tailored onboarding process. They offer a full-time staff member available to answer questions and support students during their work term. And the programs also offer some networking opportunities as well. I know Priyanka was speaking a lot about networking earlier, and our programs are definitely somewhere where you can practice your networking skills and have these sorts of opportunities. So there's always a lot going on in the summer. Both ISAO and EOSD also have their own respective mentorship programs. These programs are places where established public servants who have self-identified as Indigenous or as a person with a disability are available to mentor students. So we're really excited about that. And one thing that's really interesting this year is that we are introducing a new matching component as part of our mentorship program. So students will have the ability to fill out an application form to indicate their areas of interest, as well as what they're looking for in a mentor, coupled with their availability, how often they want to meet, that sort of thing. And then our team will review the information and find a suitable mentor that meets the student's needs. So really hoping to sort of facilitate that best fit for both parties. For the ISAO program, many of the mentors that volunteer their time are Indigenous, and for the EOSD program, all of the mentors that volunteer their time are persons with disabilities. So something that's really unique here with this mentorship program is that you're able to get advice and guidance from someone who maybe comes from a similar background to you, or has possibly faced barriers in the workplace that might be familiar to you. All of these components, when it comes to finding a good mentor, can really, be impactful on the person looking to learn and to develop in the workplace. As well, both these programs have their inventories inventories available to help new graduates gain full-time employment after their studies are finished. I know Priyanka mentioned this earlier as well, so I get to tell you a little bit more about these inventories and sort of how they work in conjunction with student bridging. So just mentioning it again here for everyone to see, for ISAO, we have the Indigenous Career Pathway, and for EOSD, we have the inventory of graduates through the virtual door to talent with disabilities. I know those are very long names. That's government for you. You'll get used to it. But basically, participants of both these programs, participants of ISAO and of EOSD, do get to learn more about these inventories, how to apply, and what they can do for you after graduation as you participate in the program. So those are the sorts of events that we hold during the summer where you can come and learn more about the inventory and how to apply. And our participants will receive advice in finding employment after graduation, sort of how to market yourself as eligible to be bridged and that sort of thing, all part of that package. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so what are people saying about us? So I just want to take a quick moment to share some positive accounts from people who have participated in our programs. Many students do find that our events are informative and well organized, that our guest speakers bring forward, a wealth of knowledge and perspective to share with the students. And basically, depending on which program that you are participating in, everything is always from the lens of either an Indigenous person or a person with a disability. So it can really sort of open up those sorts of worlds in the Government of Canada for you. Students have said that they find that they become better informed on what resources are available to them, and can often end up feeling a sense of community and support through our programs. So overall, participating in ISAO or EOSD can really help you connect with others that might be going through similar experiences. They can help you learn about how the government works, and they can definitely support you in furthering your career during the transition from academics to the workplace. So I'll just mention that, the Government of Canada, I think a lot of you have heard, is committed to trying to diversify its workforce and improving inclusivity for people who are joining us for the first time. And these programs are really trying to play a role in all of that. We can move to the next slide. Here we go. How do I register? So if everything you heard today from me sounds great and you are interested in participating in one or both of these programs, we do have a registration form that must be completed for you to gain access to all the program components that we just talked about on the previous slides. So this form can be completed by you, the student, of course. It can also be completed by the manager, or it can be completed by an HR specialist. So basically anyone who might have been involved in your recruitment process. There are lots of options there for who needs to complete it based on essentially who comes across the form first during the start of your work term. So after I'm done speaking today, just a couple minutes, I'll post these links in the chat for everyone to be able to access. I'll post our GCpedia sites for both the programs as well as the registration form. And I'm pretty sure you can also find all this information on the GC Students webpage, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So those are the places where you can find us. I do want to mention here really quickly that if you identify as being both Indigenous and a person with a disability, the form does need to be completed twice. And this is just so that you can register for ISAO and EOSD independently. So I know I've said this before, but we definitely encourage participation in both of the programs if you find yourself belonging to both communities. So where can I find more information? That's everything from me today. This is our emails up on the screen if you need to contact us. And again, I'll post our pages in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or comments. And yeah, we look forward to having anyone on the call here, register for EOSD and ISAO this summer. We'll hopefully see you at the welcoming event for ISAO tomorrow, and for the one for EOSD is on June 11th. So that's everything from me. Thank you again to GC students for having us come speak today. And I will pass it over to Mira to get us going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Camila, for sharing all this information about these programs. Camila will be with us for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be sure to direct those to her. So thank you so much, Priyanka and Camila, for all this info. So we have some announcements for our students. So I'll pass it off to Priyanka to elaborate.
Great. And we're going to go through these really quickly so that we have enough time to do the Q&A because we have so many great questions. So we talked about some social media that we have. So we have a Facebook group. You can scan the QR code and join that, or you can visit our GC Students Wiki page a little bit later on in the day and go ahead and see our Facebook group there. We'll go on to the next slide. We have a GC Students Monthly newsletter. So this is a really great way for students and non-students to actually stay in touch with what's going on. We share event details that are going around across Canada for students. We share learning opportunities as well as just kind of general updates about students, for example, pay going up and things like that. So we'll make sure to share those announcements through our monthly newsletter. So sign up for that. It's a great way to stay in touch. And lastly, we have all the social media. So we have Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we mentioned Facebook. So by scanning the QR code, you can go ahead and see all our social media there.
Perfect. So moving on to the next slide. Perfect. So we're always open for feedback. So if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to scan the QR code and complete the attached form. And we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, your feedback is truly really important to us. It really does help us update our content. So if there was anything that was unclear or missing, or you want us to discuss further within this particular presentation, please do let us know through the feedback form.
Perfect. And now on to the most exciting part of this. We are into our last segment, which is the question and answer period. So remember to ask your questions using the Q&A function. We have lots of questions to ask. Let's get started. All right, so I'll ask this to Priyanka first. Do you have any tips on networking towards being bridged? Should we directly tell colleagues what we're looking for and that we're wanting to get bridged, or is that too forward? And how do we get the opportunity to get that word out that we're interested in looking for this?
It's a really good question, and I think really good question. Okay, so many components to this question, but I'm going to start off by saying keeping an open line of communication is really your key to start that networking piece when you're looking for a bridging opportunity. The first thing you should do is make sure that your supervisor or manager is aware that you are interested in staying and having a career within the government of Canada, maybe specifically within that team. The only way students can get bridged in to the government is if there is a position available. So you have to be able to fill a box in order to get a position. So it's not a guaranteed opportunity. That's where the networking piece comes in. And that's why it's called, in technical terms, an external non-advertised position. You don't apply to it. You have to talk to your manager about it. You have to talk to your supervisor about it. If there are no positions available within your team, the networking starts there because your manager or your supervisor could potentially find other teams that might be looking to hire an employee Or they might be able to recommend you to another department or team or colleague that they are aware of that is looking for an opportunity. So that's a really good way to start that kind of networking piece. Integrating that into your work plan is key as well, because if your career goal is to eventually end up being in the government of Canada, having that on your work plan and taking that with you to make sure you're discussing that as you go through your beginning and mid and end year discussions can really show the progress of you going, making your way towards that goal. It's also useful if you do have social media to use platforms such as LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter to do somewhat of an elevator pitch for yourself. We have GC Connects and GC Collab as well on like the career marketplace that we said internally to the government. Those are great platforms as well. There are sometimes hiring managers within these Facebook groups or on LinkedIn just looking out for individuals who might be interested in in being bridged in. So just making sure you're adding information about yourself in the sense of when you're about to graduate, potentially what degree you're graduating from, what you're interested in doing in your career, if there's a particular department, just sharing those pieces of information to kind of help you find those opportunities and network with somebody through social media. And also coming to networking events. If you have the capability and capacity to attend a virtual networking event or an in-person networking event, those are great ways to get connected to hiring managers as well. You never know who you're going to meet and who might resonate with you or you might resonate with them. Those are ways to kind of put yourself out there and let others know that you're interested in that student bridging piece. So I guess to kind of sum it up, keeping that open communication line with your manager and making sure you're putting yourself out there through inventories and social media, if that is something you have. If you don't, inventories are a great way to kind of get started in that putting yourself out there aspect. Is the way you would start to network when looking for a student bridging opportunity.
Perfect.
Camila, anything to add on that front?
I think the one thing I would just mention is I think we spoke a lot about specific inventories that exist. So just keep your eye out because a lot of departments have their own lists of bridging students. And like I said, ICO and EOSD too. So while you can absolutely just sort of promote yourself to your own network, your manager, your colleagues, be really straightforward with them, let them know you're looking for bridging opportunities. There's also lists you can add your name to where hiring managers go to find bridging students. So ask about those and make sure you're adding your name to every single one that comes up.
That's perfect. A little bit about my experience too, if I could chime in. I was a student too that ended up getting bridged. And my ideal way of networking that worked for me was to actually do it in my team, mainly with my hiring manager. Being a student can be tough, especially because a contract is only so long. So you want to make the most impact in the shortest amount of time. And I wanted to show how valuable I was on the team and let my work speak for itself. So people viewed me as an asset and thought, that student's pretty good. I want them when they're done school, So a few tips that worked for me, I tried to develop rapport with my team by asking, specialists about their role, about the career paths through the government. And I started to sit in on meetings and I heard about ongoing projects the team was working on and I asked if I could get involved or maybe take meeting minutes. I found that these were all steps to be proactive, and that way I didn't feel awkward when it came to the end of my term and I had to ask if I could be bridged. I felt like by the end of my term, I had a lot of examples and I could illustrate that I was a good team player and I was worth bridging over. Your manager can't always read your mind, unfortunately. So I think being straightforward and honest is best. Let them know that you want to be bridged if that's something you're looking for. I know it can feel uncomfortable, but putting it out in the universe is honestly the best thing that you can do. The worst thing they could say is there's not an availability right now, but what you can always do as a backup, which worked for me, was ask if you can send them your resume and see if they can maybe pass it around to a few other hiring managers too. Showing initiative in your student term is really important, and developing rapport with your manager is a great way for them to instill confidence in you. That way they're not afraid to vouch for you and really say, they're fantastic if they may be wanting to refer you to another hiring manager. So that was another tactic I had if there's no vacancy on your existing team. All right, let's see what other questions we got. Ooh, we got quite a few. All right. Another one we have. Priyanka, I'll pass this one to you. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more about the student bridging process and what it's like if you've experienced that before?
Sure. We're not going to go into the technical side of what student bridging is. We actually do a session at the end of the term to better prepare you in terms of what that means. It's called Start Your or Plan Your Career with GC Students. It goes into more of that technical piece of it. Student bridging is sorry, I'm just going to pull the question up here so I can also just kind of make sure I'm answering the question. So student bridging is a way for students to take their student experience and use it as a way to find employment in the federal public service. We go into, again, I don't want to go into too much of the technical piece because really the session is really for you to start your term with GC students, which means making sure you're keeping an open line of communication. You are having that conversation with your supervisor and manager to say, these are my interests. This is what I want to learn. This is my goal. And when it comes to student bridging, that's a good piece to add into that conversation. And so I see there's quite a few questions here about student bridging. So I'm going to just say that we've kind of covered the main pieces, which is to find an opportunity for student bridging. It is through networking. There's no application for it. You don't apply to it. You might see something called an inventory. That is not an application. And again, we go into depth of what that means in our later session at the end of the term. The reason we don't want to bombard you with all the information about the technical pieces is because all of you are either just starting your term with us for the first time ever, but this is just the beginning of the term and there's a lot for you to learn within your own role, within yourselves. So we don't want to just give you all the technical pieces right away. With that being said, inventories are a great way to start with that student bridging piece. If you know you're about to graduate, you are currently working as a student. Camila mentioned that there are inventories from different departments. There's inventories for EOSD, ISCO. Adding your name to those inventories is a great way to increase that visibility piece because just as a reminder, student bridging is found through networking, whether that be networking through your team, so through your manager, your supervisor, or your manager sending your resume to other teams, or you just going out there and finding opportunities through in-person networking events or online networking events, social media. That's how you find a student bridging opportunity. So when we talk about going in depth with student bridging, that is truly what it is in terms of finding that opportunity. The opportunity has to be available in order for you to get it. But really the benefit of you being a student is that it is used as justification to speak to the experience you have gained as a student to apply to an employment with the federal public service. So I'm going to say that that's kind of as deep as we're going to get into student bridging for this time. But I do encourage you to come to our last session because once you've kind of got a hold on the conversations you should be starting at the beginning of a term, whether you're coming back for a third term or you're coming for your first, or it's your first term, once you've kind of started and the ball rolling on those conversations, we can then go into the technical aspects of what it means to be bridged in from a technical perspective, so that you can apply it better when you are making those career decisions. I am actually going to, sorry, I'm taking your job, Mira, because I saw a question about eligibility to be bridged in, and I think it ties in terms of the depth of student into defining student bridging a bit better. So there is no written deadline for student bridging. But that's not to say that each department doesn't have their own rules about how long they would like to have between a student employment versus a student bridging opportunity. With that being said, the reason that we highlight a time frame a lot at the time is because I mentioned that student experience is used as justification for you to work in a specific role. And after a specified period of time, eventually that experience is no longer considered valid. And I don't want to say that it's invalid. It's just, it's no longer going to be as relevant necessarily. So let's just give 10 years as an example. And you say, I worked as a student 10 years ago. A lot of things in the federal public service could have changed within 10 years. What you experienced can be very different 10 years ago versus today. And so that's the type of thing that needs to be taken into consideration when using student bridging as a mechanism. So we said it's an external non-advertised appointment. At that point, it becomes just a non-advertised appointment because student bridging, that justification of you being a student, might not be as relevant as justification 10 years down the line. So a lot of students do have that question of, well, should I just, am I allowed to go work in the private industry before I start working in the federal public service? Yes, absolutely. Go get your experience, go out there. If you want to work for a few years in the private industry just to see what it's like, you can absolutely do that. Come back, 2 to 3 years later, and then potentially start looking for those student bridging opportunities. But again, some departments do have a timeline, other departments do not. It's just really that understanding of why there could potentially be a timeline to that eligibility piece of student bridging. I hope that gives kind of that overview of student bridging as a whole. If there's anything that needs to be added, please feel free to do so.
Awesome. That was really helpful. I know student bridging is always a hot topic when it comes to these events. So that session later on that you mentioned, really elaborating on that, I think will answer a lot of other questions that we have in the chat. There's one question here that's actually, I really enjoy it. Do you have any tips on networking beyond your current department or division? Priyanka, do you have any tips or tricks when it comes to that?
So many. I mean, we talked about definitely different ways of finding different groups of people to network with. We talked about networking within your own department or your own team. I think that when you're looking to network outside of your department or your agency, attending networking events that are hosted by networks such as GC Students, the Public Service Commission, the Federal Youth Network, and other youth networks throughout Canada are really, really great ways to find individuals who might have the same interests and career goals as you that work in other departments. I know that a lot of the networking pieces and the network that I've built has truly been through those types of networking events, whether it was through an online platform or through an in-person event. I got to find a lot of people in different departments through those pieces because those are kind of open to anyone across the board within those regions if they can attend in person. And a lot of the time our online networking is open to anyone across Canada for those specific events. So it is a really great way to kind of do that networking piece outside of your department. LinkedIn is a great tool as well to find people outside of your department with potentially a similar education background as you or experiences that you are interested in for your career. So connecting with people on LinkedIn, again, being mindful that when you are connecting with somebody you don't know, you send them a message that's intentful. So making sure you're highlighting why you're contacting them, what you're looking to get out of networking with them, and making sure to build that connection rather than just flat out being like, hello, I would like this information. Have a great day. You want to be personable. So you want to make sure that the information that you're giving them when you're connecting with them makes them feel comfortable and confident to respond to you and build that network. So that would be the advice from my end. Anyone else want to jump in and add to that?
I can just add really quickly too. Another great, spot to start networking is if you have common interests or you find yourself a part of the same community. So back to sort of just employment equity groups, we've got visible minorities, women, Indigenous persons, and persons with disabilities. We also have a huge pride community in the federal public service. We also have the Infinity Network, which is specific for neurodiverse employees. So there's a lot of interdepartmental committees that span multiple departments, and you can join if you have those common interests, and they can be really welcoming and interesting spaces to meet people. So they're pretty easy to find, on our GCpedia pages and things. You can go in and you can find the links to things like FBEC, which is Federal Black Employee Caucus. We also have the Network of Asian Federal Employees, all sorts of places like that. And it can just be a spot to kind of get started, have a common interest, and just start chatting with people. So if you're looking to network outside of your department, that's a really good spot to start as well.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that too, I found that initially when I was a student, my work was more so admin related, but I was wanting to try maybe something different like policy work. So to really network and gain confidence in switching, my role over from admin to policy, I found that I had to gain confidence in my abilities. So by doing that first, I actually was very honest with my manager and expressed, I love the job I'm doing, but I do kind of want to switch and maybe try policy at some point. And I would ask if there were opportunities coming up for me to really develop those skills so that I could maybe do that transition in the future. So looking to your manager for support when it comes to networking and developing those skills is also very useful. I found too that if I didn't really know anyone in policy, but I wanted to learn more about it, I would ask my manager if she had anyone that she'd recommend I speak to. Managers, for the most part, that I've had have been very helpful when it comes to, pushing me to find those resources and those people to speak to. So don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing they can say is no. Awesome. Moving on. All right. Oh, this is a good one. Is there a list of inventories? Where would you typically find inventories, and can you elaborate a little bit more on them, Priyanka?
Absolutely. So Camila and I both spoke about ways you can find inventories. Our GC Students Wiki page actually has a list of inventories that are from different departments. So different opportunities you can find there. If you haven't already created a jobs.gc.ca account, that is something that you should definitely do. Set up notifications, because you never know, inventories pop up there all the time. So adding your name to inventories is kind of a great way to get your name out there. I do want to clarify that it is not a job application. You are not applying to a job. They are not evaluating you through this inventory process necessarily. So you're just applying to add your name to a list of names that they could potentially reach out to if ever a job did open up. You will get evaluated at a later date if you were chosen from that list to potentially fill an opportunity. So just want to make that absolutely clear. We talk a little bit more about those definitions, again, more of that technical piece later on in the summer, so that you can kind of marinate in the information we're giving you today to get started. But so many inventories on our GC Students Wiki page. The Public Service Commission is the owner of Federal Student Work Experience Program, Co-op, Research Affiliate Program, EOSD, ISCO. Those are all pieces that you can find on the Public Service Commission's website as well. So just keeping an eye out for when inventories open up by signing up for those notifications on jobs.gc.ca. Staying up to date about what's being posted on our wiki page, as well as other websites. So those are great ways to kind of get started there. Lastly, I'm going to say social media could be a useful way to find inventories as well. Sometimes they might be posted in Facebook groups or LinkedIn. So just keeping your eye out for those types of pieces as well. Did I miss anything in terms of where to find inventories?
I think that's perfect. Thank you. Awesome. So next question is also another hot topic. So some people have heard that, during election years, it's harder for people to get hired during budget freezes. So yeah, Priyanka, if you could elaborate on that, if it's true, and what can you do to mitigate this challenge?
It's a good question, and I think some of us might be feeling some of that instability a little bit, and I think it's normal. It's also something that I think comes in waves. This is something that this isn't the first time that we might be feeling a bit of that instability. And what I can say with that is it might be more difficult to find opportunities, yes. But I believe that there are always opportunities. If you go on jobs.gc.ca today, you will see that there are job opportunities that you can apply for. It is really a saying that we have, which is don't put all your eggs in one basket. And what that means is don't rely on one department, one team, one job. It's really important to make sure you're looking around to see what opportunities are out there that might best fit your needs in the current moment, and what could help you advance in your career. And honestly, any opportunity can help you advance in your career, because you can always take something away from an opportunity. And given how if it is a difficult time to find opportunities, sometimes taking another opportunity that isn't 100% what you want, but you can gain something out of it, is also extremely beneficial. So it's not that we are done hiring. There's no hiring happening. There is hiring happening. It's just a matter of making sure you are aware of the platforms available out there to see what opportunities are available. As a student, finding an opportunity to get rehired elsewhere really comes through that networking piece, because I'm speaking also from the stance of an employee who knows that I can go on jobs.gc.ca and find an opportunity for myself. But for a student, it's not that easy to necessarily apply to a job elsewhere. When a student contract ends, it's important to make sure you keep your student contract with you, so your letter of offer that you received, and go out there and try to network for yourself. Having that conversation with your hiring manager, if you know that this is only a one-term contract that you have because of specific restraints, it's important to make it clear from the beginning that you are interested in staying with the government of Canada, whether it be with that specific team or another team. So your manager could help you with that networking piece and make sure that you're finding that additional opportunity at the end of this current contract. With all that to say, it is a difficult time. It can be very stressful. It brings a lot of instability and anxiety when it comes to maintaining an opportunity. I think as a student, it's even more difficult sometimes, because you're in a position where you don't really necessarily know what to do or where to go. And so the advice that I have for that is just keep your eye open, make sure you're networking as best as you can, keeping that clear, open line of communication with your manager, if you know that is something that might be coming your way. So that's the opinion that I have on that. If anyone wants to jump in, Camila, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to really quickly. I know Priyanka mentioned it, but I think I'll double down on sort of this idea of taking what's available, even if it doesn't 100% meet your interests in this moment. It can sometimes feel difficult if you've studied something really specific, you feel educated in that area, and that's the job that you're kind of looking to further your career in. It can kind of feel a little scary or uncertain if you're considering a completely alternative path. But a lot of people will say that, just get your foot in the door. And the thing with government is, if you have an opportunity, you've got a term, you've got a casual contract in a field that's outside of your study, once you start getting that job security and you possibly get a longer term, or you get an indeterminate in, outside of your field of interest, it can be a lot easier to move into that field of interest than to just get in there directly, especially for some of the more competitive areas. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that a bit more, is don't be afraid to accept a position in a field that isn't directly aligned with your education or interest to start out. And then once you kind of get that experience, you get a bit more job security, you can look at sort of making a lateral move into something that suits your education and interests a bit more. And that's something that I think should really be like a strategy that should be really utilized during a time where it can seem like there's not a lot of opportunities out there, or the budget cuts, hiring slowing down a little bit. That can be a good strategy to use to try to find more opportunities for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Just to piggyback off what Camila said, that strategy actually worked for me. My first job in the government was not my dream job, but it doesn't have to be. For most people, honestly, it isn't. But again, once you develop that corporate knowledge, understand how the organization works, and you kind of identify where you do want to be, maybe it's in your branch or a different branch, you can leverage your existing knowledge that you've developed and the network you have from having your foot in the door and use that to move to where you want. So any foot in the door is better than none. That's what I got to say. And I completely agree with what Camila had just said. And I know right now, as mentioned, budget cuts can be tough. But there's always going to be opportunities. That's the thing. I have alerts set up on GC jobs, so that way I get notifications, daily about job postings, and there's still lots out there. So don't be afraid to look, really. So moving on, when networking with individuals from different, departments, is it recommended that you, I guess, use your work email or your personal email? Do you have a preference for that, Priyanka?
That's a great question. And I think that there are a couple things to take into consideration when considering what email address to use. So when it comes to your work email address, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay within that department for the rest of your career. And the risk with that is when you give your work email address, and if you do leave the department, that person that you've now networked with will no longer be able to contact you unless you actively remember to let them know that your work email address has changed. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Personally speaking, I don't like using my personal email address for work-related activities such as networking or mentoring. And so what I actually did is I created another email account that is it is my personal email account through Gmail, but it is for professional use. So I use it for my LinkedIn account, I use it for my Facebook account, and I use it for anything when it comes to networking, so that it's completely separate from my work and from my personal, but I will always have access to it. So I never have that concern of, oh, darn, I left the department and now I have to tell 50 people, that I've left the department and here's my new email address. So I think that it's really truly your preference on how you want to manage it. The last point I want to say on that is that if you did choose to use your personal email address because you don't want to be managing multiple email accounts, that is completely fine. Just make sure your email handle is appropriate. You do not know how many times we've come across inappropriate email handles in job applications. So I think that is a huge consideration to make, because we've said this before, that first impressions are a big thing. So just make sure that that's there if you do decide to use your personal email address. So that's what I have to say about that.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Camila.
I was just going to say the main thing to remember, and I know Priyanka already said this, but your work email address will expire. You will not have access to it. So like Priyanka said, it's a personal preference. My kind of route of caution is to say, use the email address you will always have access to, which in this case is generally your personal email address, because you're going to end up losing contacts, networks, those sorts of opportunities to stay in relation with people when your work email expires. And it happens to employees as well, right? Like Priyanka was talking about moving departments, getting a different email address. I did the same thing as Priyanka did. I have a Gmail account that's specific to my professional, work environment. And that's an account that will always stay with me no matter what department I'm in. So just remembering that your student email will expire, you won't have access to it, I think should hopefully give you the ability to make the right decision for you in which email to use. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to remind people about that, especially for inventories, because when you're looking to get bridged, we often get students who give us their work email for our bridging inventory, and then we can't contact them later to let them know that we're doing an intake period or that a hiring manager is looking for them. So you end up losing out on people that might be trying to reach you.
That was super helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. This is a really nice one. I like here. So how early should we start asking our managers if they have fall opportunities or if they could help us find a position during the school year? Camila, do you have an answer for that or any tips?
As early as you want. I say the sooner the better. It's just the same as everything, right? And I think Mira kind of mentioned it earlier, like you often have to manifest things for yourself, and that involves putting it out into the world what you're looking for. So when it comes to wanting to be employed in the fall time or having your contract extended, when you're interested in being bridged, managers can't read your mind. So you need to communicate that to them, let them know early on that you're interested, being respectful, of course, maybe not first hour of your first day, like, hey, can I keep a job? But definitely bring it into the conversation, in the first couple of weeks, because unfortunately, when it comes to the government, things do take a long time. So giving them that heads up, that notice means that they have a lot longer to put things in place for you if they do have an opportunity available. So it's never too early, for sure.
Veronica, anything you'd like to add there?
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say. It comes back to that open line of communication, your career goals, your work plan. Having that conversation within the first couple of days of starting is completely appropriate. Like Camila said, your manager cannot read your mind. They will not know. We talked about tips and tricks on how to stand out, and one of those pieces was being proactive and taking the initiative. So making sure you're doing that in terms of your own career is also extremely important. And the advice I will give is you are really your biggest advocate. So if you want something in your career, you have to ask for it, reach for it, because no one is just going to hand it to you. And that's where that proactive piece comes into play. So I stand by everything Camila said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whether it's bridging or wanting to be extended, have your co-op term or FSWAP or RAP term extended, being more forward, I think, about it is the best approach. As Camila had mentioned, staffing processes can take a while, so the sooner the better, honestly. And I guarantee, even though it can feel maybe sometimes uncomfortable to ask for that opportunity, as Priyanka mentioned, you are your biggest advocate. So bite the bullet and do it, honestly. The worst thing they can say is no, or maybe we'll discuss this later, but doing it earlier is definitely the best approach. Perfect. We have to have a few questions, it seems, about, benefits and information about, insurance and pension funds. Maybe could one of you elaborate a bit more on the resources to where you can find that information?
Yes, so I was actually going to take this opportunity because I see a bunch of questions about where to find the list of inventories, about eligibility in terms of benefits and things like that. So I'm going to share my screen actually and show the GC Students Wiki page. I do want to highlight that we are not compensation advisors. We are not experts in the field of benefits, compensation, pension. Those are all the client contact center where you should go and ask those questions to them if you haven't already tried to talk to your manager about it. Your manager is always your first point of contact. So if you do have questions about eligibility in terms of your benefits, pension, service buyback, talk to your manager, your supervisor, and they might also guide you to the client contact center because they are truly the experts in this field. But I'm going to go ahead and just quickly share my screen about the list of inventories and where you can find this information. So I'm going to go right here. I just need a quick thumbs up once you guys can see my screen because it's a little laggy on my side.
You're good.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have here our GC Students Wiki page. You're going to be guided to the home page here. And once you come here under employment tips and tricks, you're going to be prompted to, I've never worked for the government of Canada, or I've previously worked for the government of Canada. I'm going to take the second option as the point of this, the presentation today is really for students who are currently working in the government. Over here, you'll see we have a few different sections. So as a student, you might be looking for an opportunity, or you might be graduating and looking for an opportunity. These are going to be your best friend. So you're going to start here. You're going to click on expand, and you'll see that we have a list of student inventories where you can apply or add your name. There are recruitment programs that you should look into. We have the tips and tricks on students' job by networking, and then of course information about the Federal Student Work Experience Program, and the same thing for looking for a job after your studies. So we have information about what student bridging is. You can see here we have the eligibility criteria. We have the inventory piece, so explains what an inventory is, because a lot of the time there's a little bit of confusion between an inventory and a pool. We have a list of inventories, of course. So we can share this link with you. We highly recommend using your favorites option to favorites the GC Students Wiki page to make sure you have notifications turned on for jobs.gc.ca, making sure that you have the Federal Youth Network favorited as well, because all of these resources are extremely amazing. And then I'm just gonna do one more thing to show all of you that had questions about your benefits. I'm just going to go to resources for students, and here you can see we have during your student contract, you can have information on what you're supposed to do. So it's a lot of what we discussed today, which is making sure you have your work plan, all the groups that you can connect with. We have the ISEO program that Camila talked about here. We also have the EOSD program here. And you can go to the PSC's website. So just by clicking on the title page here, it'll take you to all the information there. We have a section on pay and benefits. Again, we are not the experts, so the best that we can do is really try to provide you with information we have. So you'll see here that we've provided you links with information about your pay. So the pay calendar, when are you expected to get a pay? Your first pay, what that's supposed to look like, access to your pay stubs, who you can contact. So we talk about the client contact center. I believe that we have the contact here somewhere, but this is a little bit of additional information that can guide you to figuring out how to understand better what your benefits and pay look like. So this is just a sneak peek, I want to say, to our wiki page. There's so much more information that you can find on there. And if there's information missing, feedback is always something that we look for. So you can always reach out to us. But yes, that I just wanted to address that because I did see a lot of questions about benefits and pension and all of that. So hopefully that can be a guiding factor for all of you.
Perfect. Awesome. Honestly, that webpage is a great resource for a lot more than you realize, honestly. I have used it plenty of times and I have not been a student for a while. So 10 out of 10 would recommend checking it out. This might be our last question for today. What are some examples of questions you would ask someone who is maybe higher level than you when it comes to networking opportunities and having that first coffee chat? I know it can be very intimidating. So, Priyanka, do you have any go-to questions you'd recommend?
That's actually a really good question. I feel it's always kind of the vibe that you get when you're speaking with somebody. And so a lot of the time it's me starting off with really expressing what I aspire to be in my career, but it's okay. when I was a student, I had no clue. So I'm going to try to rewind in my mind to see, okay, if I was a student, what would I ask somebody who's a bit higher than me? And I think that a key question I would ask is, what did you do to get to where you're at in your career? I think that that's a really standard question, because it'll really help you understand what steps they took to get to where they're at. So whether you're talking to a director, a DG, so a director general, potentially an ADM, if you ever had a chance to speak to an ADM one-on-one, growing to those levels, it's important to understand what they did in their careers to make it to that point. So I think that that would be my key takeaway, is if you wanted to just start a discussion with somebody who is above you, that is a great way to start a discussion. I'll actually pass it over to Camila to see if there's anything that she would advise.
No, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's one of my favorite questions as well. And I think, like, when you ask someone that question, what it can really help you with too is understanding the amount of different types of jobs that exist in the federal public service. Like, I've been here for 3 years, and it still blows my mind when I meet someone with a job and they're like, I work for the federal government. I'm like, I didn't know we staffed that type of position. And so hearing that from someone can really highlight like the movement that they did, where they started, all the steps in between, and where they ended up. And it's a good question to ask, especially back to that original comment about starting in a field that isn't necessarily the field you want to end up with, and then having those lateral moves. You can get a sense for sort of how that works and what it looks like. So I always start with that question as well too, and I've learned a lot about what a career path can look like for someone, and it can have a lot of very surprising steps in there. I think another good question to ask is just, what would, if they could speak to themselves 20 years ago, what would they say? And it's so relative to the person that you're talking to and who you are for the type of information you're looking for, but oftentimes people will have a bit of in retrospect, they can say like, oh, this is what I wish I knew. And that can open up for a kind of fun conversation as well, and to hear the sort of advice that they wish they'd had when they were your age starting out. So that's another question that I really like as well.
Perfect. We've gotten so much amazing advice from like both Priyanka and Camila today. So I'd like to thank you both so much for sharing all of your experience and all your advice to everyone who's on the call. And with that said, this concludes our event for today. So on behalf of GC Students Network and the Federal Youth Network, I wish to thank you all for your participation in today's event. And feel free to join us on social media and stay in the loop for any upcoming events. And thank you all again so much for coming out and taking some time out of your day. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.